All right, good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Institute of World Politics. For those of you who are new, IWP is a graduate school of national security and international affairs. We have 5 master's degree programs, 18 certificates of study, and a new doctoral program. We also offer the opportunity to take a single course without having to pay an entire semester's worth of tuition costs. One can also audit such a course at a much less cost. If you are interested in learning more about us, please feel free to speak to one of our staff at the conclusion of this event. I will begin by introducing our moderator and panelist, Hashem Meki, and then he will introduce the other panelists. Professor Meki has taught Arabic language, culture, and Middle East media at IWP since 2012. He's the owner of Bridge Language Solutions, providing an array of language translation, interpretation, and teaching services to the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, and the founder of Kiwi Global, a nonprofit organization that promotes education, health, and economic empowerment in the Sudan and the Republic of South Sudan. He also teaches Arabic language to federal employees and professionals at the National Nuclear Security Administration of the Department of Energy. Mr. Meki volunteers with IWP Center for Human Rights and International Affairs by providing Arabic translations and strategic cultural perspectives on North Africa and Middle East. Mr. Meki previously worked with the Center for Strategic and International Studies and served on the board of Voices of Sudan, a nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. He holds a bachelor's degree in both political science and international studies from the City College of New York and a Master of Arts in Strategic Studies and International Politics from IWP. Please join me in welcoming Professor Meki and the rest of our panelists today.
Thank you, Anna, for this introduction. Thank you for coming. This is going to be our first event series on Africa, so I'm encouraged to see this number of people who are interested in the subject of Angola. And to start, I will introduce the panelists, and then we would have them provide a few remarks, followed by maybe a couple questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience for questions. So please prepare your questions and don't shy away from asking questions. We would want this to be as lively as possible. So I will start with my friend and former colleague of mine, Florindo Chivucute. I went to school, as Hannah mentioned, in the bio at George Mason. So Florindo Chivucute was my colleague, and Florindo Chivucute is the founder and executive director of Friends of Angola and Radio of Angola, which is an online radio station. And he's an activist and a blogger and a digital media specialist. Florindo earned his master's degree in conflict analysis and resolution from George Mason University and has over 5 years of experience working in nonprofit organizations and international development, as well as international relations, peacekeeping, and education, while being active in the community of Portuguese-speaking countries in the United States. Since founding Friends of Angola in April 2014, he has led the design and implementation of 4 projects in Angola. Radio Angola, an online radio station hosted by him, that aims to strengthen and looks into nonviolent civic engagement among the youth, strengthening democracy in Angola through community journalism. And he also has a program, Zuela Application, which is a pro-democracy and social network and smartphone app focused on fostering good governance, eradicating corruption, monitoring elections and human rights violations, and more. All projects were envisioned as part of a larger theory of change to strengthen the capacity of civil society, empower women and youth while promoting nonviolent civic engagement by using new and existing technologies in Angola and the Western African region. These projects were funded by the National Endowment for Democracy. Florindo has also experience on higher education, worked also as education support specialist and international student advisor at Northern Virginia University College and at the Pennsylvania State University. So please join me in welcoming Florindo Chivucute. Our next panelist to the further left is Mr. Malik Shaka, who is a retired U.S. government official who served as Director, Threshold Programs for the Millennium Challenge Corporation and as a professional staff member with House Africa Subcommittee. He first visited the Angola Marcus as a journalist in 1973, prior to independence on November 11, 1975, and traveled widely in the country over a 4-decade period. Mr. Shaka has written on Angola topics for the Times of Zambia, Zambia Daily, and also London-based Africa Analysis. He testified before Congress on Angolan Government of National Unity. Mr. Shaka served as the Director of Communications for the Free Angolan Information Service for 7 years and produced and edited Angola Updated and Angola Economic Notes, 2 international distributed newsletters. He was a member of Council on Foreign Relations Independent Commission that issued toward an Angola strategy prioritizing U.S.-Angola relations in 2007. So please join me in welcoming our last panelist, Kira Garney, is a reporter for ICIJ. She previously worked at the Miami Herald and at Inside Crime, a nonprofit journalism organization based in Colombia that covers organized crimes in Latin America and the Caribbean. At the Miami Herald, Kira was part of a team investigating the illegal gold trade for a series called Dirty Gold, Clean Cash, which was a finalist for the 2018 Pulitzer Prize for explanatory reporting. She also covered education and local government. Kira has a master's degree in journalism from Columbia University and a bachelor's degree in comparative literature from Colorado College. She grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So please join me in welcoming Kira. Now that we've introduced our panelists, we'll welcome Mr. Chivucute to start us off by providing a few remarks about Angola, but also the recent development in terms of the political process, but also the corruption issue that has been part of the reporting that we'll cover more in details. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Shim, for the very good introduction, and thank you to the Institute of World Politics for hosting us, and thank you for everyone for taking the time and come and join us as we're trying to really unpack all these issues in Angola, in particular the endemic corruption system and the political process that we're trying to build in Angola. So let me take a second and just share with you about Friends of Angola. Friends of Angola is this non-profit what was created by a group of grad students at George Mason in 2014. When I came to US, there were a few Angolans that would be willing to talk to me because Los Santos, they not too many Angolans would be close to, or be related to me. So I like to say the Ethiopians, they adopted me in US. So and so there was a group of grad students from Ethiopia, Ghana, from the US, all over the world. I brought the issue before them, and they said, well, we're going to help build this, and we're going to make sure once again we can have Angola as a topic to discuss from time to time, so it's not forgotten after the Cold War. So Angola was Friends of Angola was created in 2014, and since then, like Mr. Shim alluded to, we have implemented 5 projects. We are on 6. Thank you to National Endowment for Democracy. But when we created Friends of Angola, we had something in mind. We understood the scope of the issue in Angola. And one thing we knew is that a single organization or individual is not able, cannot solve the problems in Angola. We needed to build a coalition of individuals as an organization and build a really strong civil society in Angola in order to really start to mitigate a lot of those issues, in particular the endemic corruption, and start building a strong civil society and democratic process in Angola. So with that in mind, in the past few years, we were able to to build a coalition of individuals and organizations, and be able to be present not just in Luanda, the capital, but in almost all the provinces in Angola. Our recent event was creating a number of town hall meetings throughout Angola to discuss about the upcoming local elections. So, I mean, the Angolan civil society still remain extremely weak. And Mike Okara will definitely talk about the Luanda Leaks that just came out not too long ago. But we all know that corruption is not new in Angola. Angola is there's extremely corruption in Angola. I've been 3 times in Angola last year. And it's just everywhere, it's present everywhere. And we know that the Angolan government will not be able to solve that itself, even if they have the will to do so. I guess as we discuss this issue of corruption, corruption in Angola, and the fragile democratic system that has been eroded by the corruption, and I really would like you to please feel free to share either today or some other time, how can we help build a strong democratic system in Angola? I mean, really, it's because, so one thing, if I could paraphrase Dr. Martin Luther King quote, a threat to democracy anywhere is a threat to democracy everywhere. We know that the money that has been stolen from Angola, billions of dollars, it's eroding not just democracy in Angola, but in Portugal as well. And it could be very well be used in the US as well. So it's not an Angola issue. It should be seen as a world issue where any democratic system could be affected by a corrupt system. And we want to make sure that we help building a strong democratic system in Angola. Hopefully, we can protect our democracy at home as well. Thank you.
Hi, Professor.
Well, thank you, Florindo. Thank you for this remark. I would love you to elaborate more on how do we build a strong democratic society given the issue of corruption. So if you can elaborate more on that, that would be great.
Sure. So I just finished reading a book of Professor George Ayete. It took me a very long time. I have an 8-year-old son. He keeps me very busy, and between travel to Angola. But one thing, if there's one thing I learned from that book is, and I could relate to Angola, to the question that my colleague Ms. Hashim just asked me, is that in order for us to build a strong democratic system in Angola, well, first of all, will take some time. But the time is really defined by the efforts of almost everyone, either within Angola and the individuals in the group who are willing to change the status quo. So there's no, the textbook doesn't tell us it's take 10 years or 20 years. It can take less or more, but really depends on how fast we are in terms of building this coalition of individuals and organizations who are willing to build a strong democratic system in Angola. And the reason why it's important, because it's also related to the peace as well. And I think we can work with youth. Angola, the majority of the population make up youth. So we have the youth bullshit issue. But if we don't work with those folks, it can be a blessing or could be a curse. But to go back to the question, I think if we empower those young activists in Angola, which we have done to some extent, but we have to do more. And I know through YALIC, the Department of State has been training folks on leadership program. But if we can join forces, and because the issues are so great, so big, as I said, not to repeat myself, it's no issue that can be tackled by a single individual or a single organization. If we can join forces and we can persuade the current administration in Angola that it's on their own best interest to have a democratic system, so we can have a country where everyone can freely speak about issues without fearing their lives. And that also we will be able to have a stable, peaceful country. And I'm sure we can achieve that. There are countless number of individuals who have been working day and night, either here in the US or overseas, to make this dream come true. And I think that if we keep work on it, if we just keep work on it, and I'm sure that the Angola will be a different place once we meet again 5 years from now or 2 years from now, and we're going to be talking about completely different issue, just like the Ethiopians are doing right now, and that's what I'm hoping for, and I hope. I'm not sure if I responded to your question.
Thank you. We'll open it up later, and then maybe we'll get more questions to clarify. Now, can we hear from Kira? Kira's organization had a report by the title Luanda Leaks, and I believe this report is timely because it tackles the issue of Isabel dos Santos. And for those who do not know who Isabel dos Santos is, she is the daughter of the former President dos Santos. So can you take it from here? Thanks.
Hi, good afternoon. So before I talk a bit about Luanda Leaks, I wanted to talk a little bit about the organization I work for. So the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists is a nonprofit. We were founded in the late 1990s, and we're based in DC, but I have a lot of colleagues who work around the world. And we're a group of journalists and also developers and data experts. And our goal is to work on big global investigations that we don't think one media outlet can tackle on its own. So we have media partners, we have over 100 media partners all over the world, and we work with them so that we're all collaborating on these investigations. And I think ICIJ is probably best known for the Panama Papers, if you're familiar with that. But ICIJ has also done some leaks that are specific to Africa, the West Africa leaks. And also done some sort of more traditional investigative reporting. One example would be implant files, which was an investigation into the lack of regulation in the medical device industry. So that's just sort of a broad overview of our organization. But so we obtained about 700,000 documents from an organization called the Platform to Protect Whistleblowers in Africa. And these documents all deal with the business empire of Isabel dos Santos, who, as you mentioned, is the eldest daughter of Jose Eduardo dos Santos. And he was a president, but also I think most would say an authoritarian ruler who was in control of Angola for about 40 years. So for this organization, we teamed up with about 36 media organizations in 20 different countries, including a number of journalists in Africa. We had a great partner in Angola named Carlos Rosado, who's a well-known economic reporter there. We also worked with Le Monde, the BBC, New York Times, Expresso. We had several media organizations that partnered with us in Brazil as well, because there were a lot of ties between Brazil and Angola. And we spent about 8 months working together on this investigation. We used an application that's actually open for use called DataShare that our developers had developed. And with that application, you can search all of these documents, because otherwise it would take years to go through 700,000 leaked documents. So you can put in search terms and find all of the documents that have to do with a particular person or a particular project. And then we also have another secure platform that we use to communicate with our media partners. So I think there had been a lot of reporting on Isabel dos Santos. So she's a woman who has amassed a fortune that's valued at over $2 billion. And she did so through a lot of businesses in Angola and outside of Angola while her father was the president of a country that's frequently ranked as one of the most corrupt in the world, as you mentioned. And there's been a lot of excellent reporting by an Angolan activist and journalist named Rafael Marquez. But for whatever reason, I think maybe there was some information that was just missing in the public domain, or it wasn't getting a lot of attention. But Ms. Dos Santos was still, often invited to very prestigious events. This year, she was supposed to attend the World Economic Forum meeting in Davos, and for whatever reason, she was still sort of able to promote this narrative that her fortune came entirely from hard work and from her business savvy. So what we saw with our media partners going through these records was that under her father's rule, Ms. Dos Santos' companies were awarded all sorts of public contracts, tax breaks, telecom licenses, diamond mining rights, consulting jobs, you name it. One of her companies got one of these deals or contracts. And she was also put in place as the chairwoman of Sonangol, which you probably know better than I do is really an extremely important and wealthy state-owned company. It's a state-owned oil company in Angola. So we were able to, with our media partners, go through all of these documents and sort of map out how she had amassed her fortune with a lot of help from her father. And we were also able to identify more than 400 companies and subsidiaries that she and her husband own. And a lot of these companies are in what we would often call tax havens or offshore secrecy jurisdictions like Malta or Mauritius. And these companies enabled Ms. Dos Santos and her family to move a lot of money out of Angola. So yeah, if you're interested in reading more about the reporting, our organization is icij.org. But there we have a lot of examples of the types of business deals that we were able to see in the documents. And I think one thing that really stuck out to us was that a lot of very prominent Western consulting and accounting firms and law firms were willing to work with Ms. Dos Santos' companies despite the fact that there have been a lot of questions about the origins of her wealth for many years. And they just didn't ask a lot of questions. We can see in emails and so forth in the leaked documents that they weren't really scrutinizing her to the level that they probably should have been. So.
Thank you. Thank you for your remark, and of course, prepare your questions. Okay, now we would turn it over to Jacques, and maybe you can tell us about what's next for Angola, and also, if you can, what the U.S. policy ought to be vis-a-vis Angola. Thank you.
First, I'd like to talk about the importance of the work that was done by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. Until relatively recently in Angola, to talk about corruption was to criticize the ruling party, the party that's been in power since 1975. So therefore, it was off limits. Things have begun to change. Gentlemen who had been the president of the country since 1979, Jose Eduardo dos Santos, retired. He's now in Barcelona, where he's receiving medical treatment. And when he left office, the last thing that he thought would happen is that the members of his political party would come after him. A bomb was dropped in Angola by the International Foundation for Investigative Journalists, and the shock waves continue to date. In Angola, you're going to have a situation where the Angola Leaks is going to have an impact on upcoming presidential elections, upcoming local elections. Things that people in Angola thought were going on in terms of corruption, they now, in fact, have the evidence. The real question is going to be how the government, how the ruling party responds. Will they use the documents that are now available to do a far-reaching forensic analysis, this becomes a question. One of the things that I'm sure of is that civil society and opposition parties in Angola will raise these issues, and the evidence that they will present will come from the Luanda Leaks. So I think folks in Angola will be focusing on this. My question is, what will the USG do? And I think that this is a critically important question. I can remember just a few years ago where there were people here in the administration who saw Ms. Isabel dos Santos as a good thing when she took over as the chairman of the board of Sonangol, the state oil corporation. In fact, the piggy bank of the country. I don't think people at this juncture would say that in State Department. The question I'm going to raise is, what will the State Department and USG do to assist Angolans to find out information? And will we, for example, as the USG, folks are awful quick in this day and age to come up with sanctions. Will there be sanctions that come from Luanda Leaks? Based on the information that's been amassed so far, it seems to me that there are people in the Angola government, people associated with Mr. Santos, who should be persona non grata in this country. If you're saying that somebody can't come, those folks should be on the list. The other thing that I'm hoping will happen is that the U.S. Congress and the relevant committees, whether that's foreign affairs, I'm hoping that they will hold, in fact, hearings, because this information, in fact, needs to be spread further and further and further. It needs to become an issue here. The United States has a special relationship with Angola. We have 3 strategic dialogue partners on the African continent. 1, South Africa, 2, Nigeria, and 3, Angola. So what you're saying, when you have just 3 countries on a continent, 54 countries that you have this privileged and special relationship with, you need to be concerned about what's going on in the country. How will this relationship be used to, in fact, move this legal process forward? What kind of technical assistance will the U.S. government play in helping the Angolan government get control of the system of corruption there? You have Department of Treasury, for example, that could be of great assistance. USAID could be of great assistance in providing the kinds of skills and systems that the Angolan government would need in order to deal with this issue. I'm just going to say one more thing before I shut my mouth, and that is, I hope that the U.S. government will, in fact, be supportive of civil society in this effort. Sometimes you have a situation, and I speak as somebody who spent significant amount of time on Capitol Hill as a staffer. You'll find that the executive branch has a privileged relationship with governments, which it should have, but sometimes they shut out civil society. I'm hoping that what happens in Angola is that you'll have a full-blown discussion of this that would include political parties, civil society, and even church organizations. In the context of Angola, the Roman Catholic Church, for example, is an important organization. I'm going to stop at this point and turn the mic back.
Thank you for your remark. So if we can open it up for Q&A and explain more on these remarks, that would be great. So please raise your hand and maybe we can pass the mic to you and you can ask your question. Thank you.
So I would just be curious to know what was the initial spark that kind of catalyzed the investigation specifically to the daughter?
So we actually just received these documents unsolicited, and it's now become public. The source of those documents has publicly disclosed that he's the source of those documents, and it's a gentleman named Rui Pinto, who's well known in Portugal for the football leaks. So he, from what I understand, obtained these documents while doing some of his investigations related to football leaks. From what I understand, there's a law firm in Portugal that was doing some work for Mr. Santos and also involved with some of the football leaks stuff. So yes, and I think there have been a lot of conspiracy theories in Angola, but ICIJ gets its funding strictly from foundations and individuals who donate, so our funders don't actually have any say in what kinds of projects we do, because I think there's a conspiracy theory in Angola that we were paid by the Angolan government, or that they provided the documents to us, but Mr. Pinto has now publicly disclosed that he was the source.
So when you say football leagues, are you saying like FIFA was the tie into this?
No, so I think Mr. Pinto had some documents that related to a law firm in Portugal that just coincidentally also had done some work for Mr. Santos. So from what I understand, that's how he came across these documents.
Hello, my name is Martina Perino, and I come from the International Republican Institute. I am very sympathetic to this cause of corruption. I'm originally from Mozambique, so I really understand what my colleague goes through on a daily basis. So I have 100 questions, but I will not bore you with all of them. The people of Angola know that Angola is corrupt. This is not news. So what is happening in Angola, and how are people digesting this information? Somebody in the panel said that this will have an impact on the elections as well. Well, it's news, but it's not fresh news for many Angolans who feel this on a daily basis. So what do you think the effect will be, and how are people in Angola feeling about this? Besides the conspiracy theory, of course. And my second question is related to investing in democracy. Why is this a good time to invest in democracy in Angola? What is the spark there now that the US government and everybody should be jumping on this opportunity? Thank you very much. I have my own answers for that, but I want to hear from you.
One of the things I think we need to understand is that there have been some changes in Angola in recent years that have been pivotal events. The end of the Civil War with the death of Jonas Savimbi was a pivotal event. Recently, President João Lourenço gave the leading opposition party permission to bury Jonas Savimbi, who had been lying in a grave for 18 years, perhaps. This helped to bring the nation together in terms of national reconciliation. You also have a political ferment where you had an authoritarian country in Angola. I would argue that it's less authoritarian today. That you will be harassed, maybe put in jail, but you don't have the kind of physical elimination of people going on that took place when Kamulenge and yes, when you had people who were just being killed by the government.
When is this? The assassination of two activists, the assassination of two activists, Kamulenge. I don't recall the dates, but the Department of State Human Rights Report state those two assassinations. But I can also get back to you in regard to that. West of America has reported an issue as well.
But it's been a while now.
Yes, yes.
When you say a while, we're talking about within the last
5 years.
5 years.
5 years.
Yes. And for me, that's not, it's a process that's going on now. The good thing is that they haven't killed any people lately. They beat up some people. They put some people in jail, but you don't have that same murderous edge at present. This government is more attentive to human rights than the previous one. Is there room for improvement? You bet there is. But it's not the same country that it was under Jose Eduardo dos Santos in reference to the issue of corruption. Because here's a situation where they're now talking about putting on trial the daughter of a former president. That was inconceivable. Nobody thought anything like this would ever happen. And since Mr. Dos Santos selected João Lourenço as his successor, nobody thought that João Lourenço would then turn around and go where the truth took him and put pressure not only on President Dos Santos' daughter, Isabel, the princess, but also his son, Zainu, who was the head of the Sovereign Wealth Fund. So, some positive changes, but they need to be accelerated. You have important events coming up now. You have local elections for the first time in the history of the country. And then you have national elections coming up in 2022.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
And with the possibility of alternates taking place. And that was not a possibility up until this time.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if it's work.
That's
If I could just add to the first question, so Angola is a very unequal society, extremely unequal, and because of the economic crisis that Angola living right now, extremely high unemployment. So people are asking more questions than before. They really want to know, what is the beef, right? I mean, really, this is a country that extremely well, in terms of natural resources, but people are struggling. I was there and I saw it. I mean, it's just, it's heartbreaking. So that's, in part, that's what it is. The employment rate, it's more than 55%, probably higher. So that's the economic crisis. That's perhaps, in my opinion, is actual allowed to raise more questions. So the system didn't change. It changed the president, but the system remained the same. Just to make a distinction, very important distinction. Change the president, but the system remains the same. And the reason why I believe it's the best time to invest in democracy in Angola now, because Angola is just like a time bomb, if you will. So the Al-Shabaab, they are recruiting. In Mozambique, it's a problem already. Angola is just a matter of time, in my opinion. So it's really a fertile ground for recruitment, high unemployment, no lack of access of education. I mean, it's just with, if my memory serves me well, Al-Shabaab is paying $10 per month in Nigeria. This is so it's very dangerous, actually. And the government needs to do more in order to, because it's that push and pull, if you will. They're always looking for a place to recruit. In DRC, we heard some rumors going on. So it's not really an Angola issue. It's really more than an Angola issue. We need to pay attention to it. And that's why we should invest in democracy. Also because we have a president who, he needs to win the Angolan sympathy, because the party is fragmented right now. It's not very popular within MPLA, but it's not very popular within Angolans outside the political party. So he's trying to win the hearts and minds. So, and probably we can work with him if he's willing to and make some positive change. That's just my opinion.
And if I could argue to make another point, corruption is only part of the problem. The problem in Angola is in fact governance, which is much broader. It's much broader. And this would have to do with the political situations, whether there's a level playing field. It would have to do with economic management. Does the government have policies in place that would lead to investment and lead to growth? This would also be taken, so for me, it's governance, which is much, much broader than corruption.
Thank you. Next question, please. The young lady right there in the middle. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm a journalist for the Portuguese news agency, so I say hello to everybody who is from Angola, from Mozambique. I was in Portugal when this exploded about the ICIG. So I wanted to ask that Isabel dos Santos, she said that she will sue the reporters that are doing this, and the ICIG. What do you make? Is this like a legitimate defense? And what is this attack on the press? How does it influentiate the image of Angola trying to combat corruption?
Sure.
Yeah, those are good questions. So I think as reporters in Washington, D.C., we're very fortunate that we don't face the kind of pressure that a lot of our colleagues and our reporting partners do around the world. So we haven't personally been impacted. But I think part of the reason that we like to collaborate with on these big investigations is that we feel like there is sort of some safety in numbers, and our reporting partners in Africa, for example, have the support of knowing that they're working on this investigation with other media outlets in countries with better laws that protect press freedoms.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering, what is the role of international influence in facilitating this corruption? Specifically, I'm thinking of China and Russia, but any international actors. And then, what policies should the U.S. implement to reduce corruption, right? At the same time, do no harm, not further cause turmoil or negatively influence domestic politics within the country.
Who want to take this question?
Well, so the reason why Isabel and many government Angolan officials were able to sack the country and send the money overseas wasn't alone. It was the help of, unfortunately, including U.S. companies like PwC. I mean, really powerful firms that aid those individuals to steal billions of dollars. They're not doing it alone. Now, I think they have done tremendous harm. There's no doubt. But can we undo some of this harm they have caused? Yes. Can the international community play a role? I'm very realistic, and I like to believe that it's probably so. It's not really the U.S. Well, let me put it this way: all the states are up there operating first and foremost for interest, right? But we live in a globalized world. Today, not too long ago, I think a few days ago, there's a newspaper, local newspaper reported, there's Angolans who travel all the way from Angola, travel all the way in South America to come to US. And I think, if my memory serves me well, three of them have died, drowned, crossing the river. So yes, the US has a lot of tools, the international community overall, like the World Bank, IMF, but also the US government has a lot of tools on the toolbox in order to preempt some of this money laundering. I'm sure the US can stop. And the US have done some work. I mean, to be fair here, today the Federal Reserve is not selling dollars, as far as I know, to Angolan government. It has been going on for years. I think 4 or 5, if my memory serves me well, because of corruption, money laundering, large scale. Now, can US do more, like Mr. Malik has alluded to, turn into those individuals some persona non grata? Absolutely. They can. The international community can also make sure we don't have companies like the company in Spain, Sindra, basically aiding the Angola government to rip off the election. So, I mean, so there's a lot of things that the international community can do, in particular, including the US, in order to preempt a lot of those issues that, to some extent, end up being our problem in the US. And that includes corruption, that includes immigration. Folks who are dying trying to cross, I mean, really, I mean, no one border, not two, but few borders, and just losing their lives because the Angolan government failed to do what it's supposed to do because the money has been stolen. Yes, Ken, the IMF can probably be, or the World Bank can be more open in regard to the loans that they are giving to the Angolan government, but also tell them to be more aware of human rights, democracy in Angola. Yeah, absolutely. They don't answer questions. We have contacted them. The deals they are dealing with the Angolan government are opaque as the Chinese government. Just there's no transparency. That's unacceptable, and that's taxpayers' money. Next, please.
Yes, thanks. John Fox, former State Department, former World Bank, and various other things. A couple of questions. One, have we seen, as in a wide range of countries where we've seen the corruption issue as the catalyst for demonstrations, youth-led demonstrations, society-wide, or certainly crossing ethnic and sectarian and previous socio-political boundaries, are we seeing anything like that welling up in Angola? And secondly, just to press a bit on this point about where the U.S. actually stands now, certainly in going back decades, as I'm sure many in this room know better than I, the trench warfare on Angola policy and the seesawing has been notable. Are there factors now, including maybe the self-sufficiency or relative independence of the U.S. on energy, other factors that change the dynamic with respect to U.S. policy to where it was 3, 5, 10 years ago?
One of the things that, in fact, happened was it was the youth of the country which began to hold demonstrations on human rights issues. And you had the famous trial of the 15+2. I don't think anybody in this group was 30 years old. You get from teenagers up to about 30, and the whole nation had their eyes on these people who said, I'm going to hold the demonstration at Kinoshishi Square. Well, you don't hold a demonstration at Kinoshishi Square because you could end up getting hurt. This small group of young people made this the issue of governance. So they contributed, even though their focus was at that time human rights. They started a study group. And this included rappers, Luanda Leaks, another fellow by the name of Nito Alves Jr. It was students who helped precipitate this. And you now have a situation where the government says they want to turn over a new leaf. President João Lourenço has been able to come up with a political bureau and a central committee that is more supportive of him. So on that basis, I think there's the possibility of change, but that the USG needs to encourage President Joao Lourenço, to move forward on a campaign that's anti-corruption and good governance. That would be what my argument would be. There was a time that you stood up, and I'm not talking about a whole lot of years ago, where you could get hurt, you could get killed. That's less the case today, and people are more ready to speak out than they have been in the past. The U.S., to its credit, for example, I would argue the reason that a fellow like Rafael Marquez, the well-known journalist and anti-corruption activist, is still alive, was because he would come here to this country and he would be received by the Assistant Secretary of State for Africa. The U.S. was saying that this Rafael fellow and his organization of one is an important person. I wasn't privy to the conversation between the Angolan government and the U.S. government, but I could tell you without fear of reproach, the U.S. expressed their concern about Rafael's health when he had the various trials come up on nebulous charges. He beat them in court, and you never beat anything in court in Angola. So U.S. played a positive role in that respect. National Endowment of Democracy, for example, was a major supporter of Rafael. They provided support to Friends of Angola, which made it possible for people to begin to raise these key issues. These local elections are going to be critical that are coming up now, and USG needs to be supportive of the local elections, the upcoming elections. They need to say there has to be a level playing field. And finally, the thing I would say is that banks, financial institutions, they were very open to working with Isabel dos Santos. This is no longer the case. Audit firms, banks, etc. have said, no, we're not going to work with you anymore. And the reason that they took this position was because of fine investigative work by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists.
I was the ambassador in Angola from 2004 to 2007 and continue to be active with the Anglican Church in Angola, which has supported a lot of work, especially in Ongiga, but elsewhere working with women's groups. But I think, to be fair, Angola has horrible corruption, got it, but it has not had the sort of bloodthirsty repression that many other countries in Africa have had. Now, I know this is awful to say because it sounds like you're justifying any kind of repression, and I would not want to do that. But certainly, from the time when I was there, except for Rafael, who, as you said, went into and out of the prison systems and we kept him, or he was kept safe, there was no one in prison at that time for political crimes. And as the oil prices went down and they had stolen, Isabel had stolen the sovereign wealth fund, and the young people got more and more angry, and there was concern, and then there was greater repression, and now we're fortunately on another wave of less repression, as you've mentioned. And I absolutely agree with everything that you have said about what we can do. Couple things I would just like to say. I think we should be supportive of Joao Lourenço as he moves forward and encourage him in the right direction without being clearly leading. I think the Angolans have shown that they can be responsible with support. They need to have support. You mentioned Treasury to help them. There's lots of capacity building that needs to be done, and I don't know where we stand. I'm no longer with the State Department, so I don't know where we are right now. But there is a lot of capacities building that needs to be done in order to underpin good government's efforts. But at any rate, I just think that this could be a medium good story if we can indeed work closely with the sort of efforts that, thanks to the journalists bringing it to people's attention, could go forward now, especially in the municipal elections.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you to all of you for doing this. I think it's a terrifically interesting issue, and I'm glad you're highlighting it. I think it deserves more attention. My name's Lester Munson. I work at a lobby firm right now, and I'm here on behalf of a client that was a victim of corruption in Angola under the Dos Santos regime. It's the Africa Growth Corporation. It's an American company that builds housing. And they've sought redress under President Lourenço and haven't received it. There's been, the corruption is ongoing and they still haven't been made whole. And I don't bring that up necessarily to ask for a specific answer on that case, but more to highlight how much real change have we seen. I understand that there have been some steps taken and some of the revelations we've seen have been positive and in the right direction, but shouldn't we in fact be doing more? Isn't this the opportunity really to maybe demand more of Angola, that the Angolan government do more for its own people, that it not be corrupt, and that there be real changes that can result in a real fresh start in that country?
I would argue, for example, the plight of your client's company is going to be a deterrent to other U.S. companies investing there. They need to get their house in order. I'm not talking about bossing anybody around, but we need to be supportive of U.S. businesses that are operating within the laws of Angola and the United States. And we also want to promote foreign direct investment there, not only by U.S. firms, but by firms around the world. And the only way to do that is to improve the situation as it relates to governance and, more specifically, corruption. This is the best way, I think, to help the Angolan people at this time.
If I could just add, so I've been following the African Growth Corporation issue with Angolan government, and I have to say this: the Angolan has a lot of problem when it comes to property rights. It's really it's a big issue, and I hope that the Angolan government, like Malik said, will be able to solve this issue, and so that it's become deterrent and it doesn't happen again. The general that involved, I've read, I've spoken with the different NGOs, including here in the US. It's not the first time that happened. The Angolan government, President Lourenço actually needs to solve this issue. The problem in Angola is that it's a one-man rule. I mean, let's just be honest here. I don't want to quote Sugar. I think it's important to be honest here, right? Angolan is a one-man rule. And that's the problem with some democracies, that so-called democracies. Because on the surface, it looks like a real democracy, right? You have a parliament, you have the presidency, and you have. But in Angola, it's really nothing happened without the consent of the president. It doesn't matter where you are. It's Lourenço is one-man rule. Like Dos Santos created. I'm not saying that Lourenço created the problem. Mr. Lourenço created the problem. Dos Santos created, and Mr. Lourenço hasn't changed. And it's within the constitution itself is really one man rule. Is one who appoint almost everyone, including the governors. Angola has one of the worst political system, even in CPLP. Like Mozambique, the governors, they are elected, I think, semi-elected, but you have local elections. But in Angola is one of the few countries in Portuguese-speaking countries there where the president is one indicated governor. We don't have local elections. There's no such thing as local power. It's everything centralized in one place. So, and I agree. I mean, look. I remember when we need to give work with the president, as Mr. Ambassador said. It's true, but we need really to make sure we push him towards a direction where Angolans are gaining something from it. It's not just Lorenzo consolidating power for himself. And the fight against corruption has become the new talking point in a lot of kleptocracy. From Mozambique to, I remember when Hugo Chavez was running on fight against corruption. I don't know if you still remember, but that's what was his theme. Hugo Chavez, when he came to power, I will fight corruption. And we know what it then became, the fight against corruption. The former president of Angola, dos Santos, he declared a fight against corruption. He called a tolerance zero, so against corruption, while he was sacking the country. I mean, it's just so going back to the African group. I hope the Angolan government will resolve. It's not a unique case in Angola. If you do something, it's this. Unfortunately, it's just property rights another issue that we need to deal with, including religious rights in Angola. That's also. But my Angola fellows in Cabinda, in Lundas, they still today don't have the same rights as folks in Luanda. Right now, as we speak, there are more than 6 activists detained since December of 2019 in jail because they were protesting, demanding referendum in Cabinda. Right now, they are there. So we really have to be careful here. We want to make sure we don't create another beast. We don't create another Dos Santos. Yes, we need to support him, but we need to ask questions and we need to demand more.
Right in the middle here, yeah.
I can speak. My name is Jason Hoagland. I spent most of my life on the continent. I grew up in Kinshasa. Across Africa, kind of leapfrogging off of your previous comment, across Africa and in many other countries, the fight against corruption is a very popular fight. It's a very popular rallying cry, and is often used as a way to dismantle the power structures of one's predecessors. Right? It's easy for such a campaign to take apart one's predecessor's power structure and use to consolidate one's own power. And so looking at it from that perspective, what, if anything, makes this case different, possibly more hopeful, and what are we doing, or what could the United States be doing to make sure that the United States is not playing into or helping President Lorenzo consolidate his own power in a way that would be against the interests of the furtherance of democracy in Angola?
Thank you. Maybe Kerry can tell us more, since your organization has written the report. Maybe the journalists have more to do to expose this kind of corruptions and allegations. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I don't know that I can speak to what the US government should do in this particular case, but I do think, as you mentioned, one thing that we saw in a lot of these documents was that a lot of US firms or UK-based firms, very prominent auditing and consulting firms, were very willing to help Ms. Dos Santos with her business empire. So I think to kind of avoid that situation in the future, whether it's with the current administration in Angola or other countries that have struggled with corruption, Perhaps there need to be some changes in terms of what kinds of questions you have to ask before you're taking on a client who has been linked to corruption.
Well, thank you. If I could add, I mean, so it kind of reminds me during the Cold War, everyone becomes a pro-democracy. Mobutu Sese Seko, I think you remember him from Zaire. He became a very democratic man because he was looking for support. And he ended up, it was a crock, right? We knew that. I mean, really dictator, bloodthirsty dictator. So I think these new talking points about the fight against corruption needs to be, we need to look, we have to be skeptical. Yes, we need to embrace, but we have to be skeptical. And we need to answer questions. We have to ask a lot of questions. The problem where we're having today in Angola is that everyone's talk about almost everyone except Lorenzo. People don't ask questions to Lorenzo. The same thing we did to Dos Santos, right? So we don't ask questions. For instance, the EXX report, they accused Ms. Lorenzo of giving a public bidding to some Egyptian company, telecom, if my memory serves me well. They don't, right? And so no one in the media, journalists in Angola, I've asked Mr. Lorenzo, can you elaborate more on that? Can you give us information? Today, the parliament cannot investigate, cannot ask questions to executive power. Because during Dos Santos, and to be fair, it wasn't during Mr. Lorenzo, during Dos Santos, the MPLA passed a document to prohibit the parliament to monitor or ask questions to the executive power. So Mr. Lorenzo has the book check. He can write as many checks as he wants, and no one can ask questions. So, I mean, and the other issue is lack of transparency, right? We really don't know. The President Lorenzo never really disclosed how much money he has. So it's hard to us to tell whether he's profiting from presidency or not, because we don't know how much he has. Does he have $100? $100 billion? No one knows. So the lack of transparency is the issue, the core issue within these waves of skepticism within Angolans, that we say, well, you want to fight corruption, but you need to be more open. You need to tell us, where is the money? So you were saying you have recovered money. Where's the money? What are you going to do with the money? They're not being open. They're not being transparent. So it's hard to tell. And if I were President Lorenzo, and if he really has the will to fight corruption, then one thing I would ask is him to be more transparent. That's what I would ask. I would ask him to tell how much money he has, what is asset. No one is going to put him in jail. He's the president of Angola. The constitution protects him. But just tell us how much money you have. And stop engaging in opaque deals when it comes to public funds. That's what I would do.
I'd like to make a statement here. We need to hold Zuela Lorenzo accountable. We need more transparency. But I would make a wager here that if one were to check the present bank account of Mr. Lorenzo, he's low income compared to the fellow who gave the piggy bank, the state oil corporation, Angola, to his daughter, and the sovereign wealth fund to his son. The ability to maneuver Zuela Lorenzo, one of the reasons, in my humble opinion, I looked at the country for more than 40 years, that President Dos Santos stepped down was because it was becoming too difficult. He needed an off-ramp. Zuela Lorenzo, hold him accountable, what João Lourenço does not equal right now, Jose Eduardo dos Santos. That would be what my argument would be. And that the US government needs to engage. They need to be supportive of democracy and governance work there. If you look at the democracy and governance budget, unless it went up yesterday, too little money. You have critical elections coming up. US needs to be involved on that level. We have an opportunity for democratization, for transparency to be advanced in Angola. And I'm not for a moment think that this will be easy, but we're at a place where it's more possible now than it would have been 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And clearly, more of a possibility with Lorenzo there as opposed to President Jose Eduardo dos Santos.
Well, thank you so much, Shaka, for this remarks. And please, well, I guess we have one more questions. Okay, who has the question? Ambassador, please.
Just two quick things. One is I did not mean that we should support João Lourenço. We need to support a panoply of political, civil society, religious forces, but to the extent that they can lead and we can support, we being the US, it's much better. So that was my point there. But the other thing is I think, since this is an educational organization, we have to become much more sophisticated in the way we think about corruption. Because we throw massive corruption, Isabel dos Santos, in the same category as a nurse who takes a little bit extra in order to give better treatment to one patient than the other. And I think that we need to become more sophisticated in the way we talk about corruption so that we can assist the countries in combating it. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Well, with that, please join me in giving a round of applause, a very warm one, to Florindo, Kira, and Shaka, and to yourselves. And thank you so much. Please stay tuned for our next events
I was thinking that
and continue the dialogue after this, please. Thanks.